In 1886, physicist Ernst Mach stood in his study, paralyzed by an unsettling realization. The man who would later revolutionize our understanding of space and time found himself haunted by a peculiar sensation, the unmistakable feeling that he was being observed. Not by a person, mind you, but by something far more elusive. He described it in his private notes as the persistent intuition of an invisible witness, a presence that seemed to intensify whenever he approached his most revolutionary insights about the nature of reality. This wasn't mere paranoia or scientific fatigue. It was the dawning awareness of participating in something far more intricate than individual perception. You felt it before, haven't you? That peculiar sensation when you're alone in a room, maybe reading late at night, or washing dishes in the quiet kitchen after everyone has gone to bed. That sudden, undeniable certainty that someone is watching you. Your head turns instinctively. Your eyes scan the empty corners, the darkened doorways. Nothing, just silence and shadows. Most people dismiss this feeling as paranoia, as an evolutionary leftover from when our ancestors needed to fear predators in the darkness. But here's where it gets stranger. What if that feeling isn't a glitch in your perceptual system? What if it's actually the most accurate sensation your consciousness can produce? Let's begin with something you take completely for granted: your own thoughts. Right now, as you process these words, you're probably convinced that you are the one doing the thinking. That somewhere behind your eyes sits a central command center, some essential you that's evaluating these ideas, making decisions, having reactions. This feels so obviously true that questioning it seems absurd. Of course, you're thinking your thoughts. Who else would be? But here's where modern neuroscience delivers its most unsettling revelation. Thoughts don't actually originate from some central you. They simply appear in consciousness, like bubbles rising unbidden to the surface of still water. Dr. Michael Gazzaniga at UC Santa Barbara has spent decades studying split-brain patients, people whose corpus callosum, the bridge connecting the brain's two hemispheres, has been severed to treat severe epilepsy. What his research revealed should terrify anyone who believes in free will. When these patients were shown images to only one hemisphere of their brain, something remarkable happened. Their bodies would respond to information their conscious, verbal mind had never seen. Their left hand might reach for an object that their speaking right brain was completely unaware of. But here's the truly chilling part. When asked why they performed these actions, the conscious mind didn't say, "I don't know." Instead, it instantly fabricated a story, a perfectly reasonable explanation that felt completely true to the person telling it. "I stood up to stretch," or "I was going to get something from the store." Gazzaniga called this storytelling function the interpreter, a part of your brain that's constantly weaving together the fragments of your experience into a coherent narrative. It creates the illusion that there's a unified you making all your decisions. But the research shows something different. The decisions happen first, often unconsciously. The story of why you made them comes after. You're not the author of your experience. You're the audience watching a performance you mistake for reality. Think about the last time you had what psychologists call an intrusive thought. Something that suddenly popped into your mind. Something disturbing or random that you would never consciously choose to think. Where did it come from? You didn't manufacture it. You didn't order it from some internal catalog of thoughts. It simply arrived, like a message transmitted from somewhere else entirely. And then what happened? Another part of your mind immediately responded, judging the thought, accepting or rejecting it. But if you didn't create the thought, and you didn't create the response to it, then what exactly is the you that seems to be having this experience? To understand what's happening in your mind, we need to journey into the strangest realm of modern science: quantum mechanics. You've probably heard of the observer effect, how subatomic particles seem to behave differently when they're being observed. Most people think this is just an interesting quirk of very small things. They're wrong. The implications are far more profound than that. The observer effect suggests that reality at its most fundamental level doesn't exist in any definite state until it's observed. Before measurement, a particle exists in what physicists call a superposition, multiple possible states simultaneously. Only when consciousness encounters it does it collapse into a single definite reality. This isn't science fiction. This is the best scientific understanding we have of how the universe actually works. Physicist John Wheeler, who coined the term black hole, proposed something even more radical: it from bit. His idea was that all physical entities are information theoretic in origin. That consciousness isn't something that emerged from matter over billions of years of evolution, but rather something from which matter itself emerges. The universe, according to Wheeler, might be more like a thought than a machine. But let's bring this back to your direct personal experience. Have you ever noticed what happens when you try to observe your own thinking? The moment you attempt to watch your thoughts, they change. The very act of turning your attention inward shifts the nature of what's happening in your mind. It's as if there are two distinct levels of awareness operating simultaneously within your consciousness. The stream of thoughts, emotions, and sensations flowing through your awareness, and something else that's watching that stream. But here's the question that should keep you awake tonight. If you can observe your thoughts, what exactly is doing the observing? Dr. Antonio Damasio, one of the world's leading neuroscientists, has spent his career mapping the landscape of human consciousness. His research reveals something startling. What we call self isn't a thing at all. It's a process, a collection of different neural activities, autobiographical memories, sensory experiences, emotional responses, social conditioning, all woven together by the brain into what feels like a coherent, continuous identity. But here's the part that should unsettle you. Brain imaging studies show that this sense of being a unified self is constructed in real time, moment by moment. Your feeling of being the same you who woke up this morning, who graduated from school, who fell in love for the first time. This continuity of identity is being actively created by your nervous system right now, as you listen to these words. You're not experiencing reality directly. You're experiencing a story about reality, told by neural processes you're not even aware of. A story narrated by something that might not be you at all. Dreams offer us a window into this strange relationship between observer and observed. When you dream at night, you experience yourself as the protagonist of the unfolding story. You make decisions, feel emotions, react to dream events. The experience feels completely real and immediate. But when you wake up, you realize that everything, including the you that seemed to be making choices, was being generated entirely by your sleeping brain. The dreamer, the dream characters, the entire dream environment were all manifestations of the same underlying process. So here's an uncomfortable question. What makes you so certain that waking consciousness is fundamentally different? This brings us to a phenomenon that psychologists call the feeling of a presence. That eerie sensation that someone or something is watching you when you're completely alone. For years, this was dismissed as superstition or anxiety. But researchers like Dr. Olaf Blanke at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology have made a disturbing discovery. They can trigger this feeling artificially. By stimulating specific regions of the brain with electrodes, they can make people feel the unmistakable presence of another consciousness. even in an empty room. But here's what's truly fascinating. The brain areas involved in this phenomenon are the same ones responsible for what neuroscientists call self-other distinction. The neural circuits that normally help you differentiate between yourself and the external world. When these circuits become disrupted, whether through brain stimulation, sensory deprivation, or certain medical conditions, the boundary between self and other begins to blur. You start to feel the presence of another observer, another awareness that seems distinct from your own. But what if these circuits aren't malfunctioning when this happens? What if they're detecting something that's actually there? I want you to try something right now, if you can do so safely. Close your eyes and attempt to observe your thoughts without thinking them. Try to position yourself as a pure witness, watching the space in your mind where thoughts arise before they crystallize into words or images. Can you do it? Can you catch that moment before a thought appears? If you can maintain this state of witnessing, even briefly, you've encountered something profound. You've experienced the gap between the observer and the observed within your own consciousness. You've felt what contemplatives throughout history have called the watcher, the aware presence that observes all mental activity but remains unchanged by it. For thousands of years, contemplative traditions around the world have been mapping this territory of consciousness with the same rigor that modern scientists bring to the study of the physical world. What they discovered challenges everything we think we know about the nature of the self. Buddhist meditation speaks of mindfulness, the ability to observe thoughts, emotions, and sensations as they arise and pass away, without becoming identified with them. Practitioners learn to recognize the difference between the content of consciousness and consciousness itself. Hindu philosophy describes what they call sakshi bhava, witness consciousness. This is described as an aware presence that observes all experience, but remains untouched by any of it. It's like the space in which all thoughts and feelings occur, but which is never disturbed by their coming and going. These aren't metaphorical concepts or religious beliefs. They're descriptions of a direct experience that anyone can verify through careful investigation of their own mind. The experience of being observed, even when completely alone. Modern philosophy has begun to catch up with these ancient insights. Dr. Thomas Nagel, one of our most rigorous contemporary philosophers, argues that consciousness poses what he calls the hard problem. Even if neuroscience successfully maps every neural process, even if we can predict every brain state with perfect accuracy, we still can't explain the most basic fact about consciousness: why there's subjective experience at all. Why is there something it's like to be you? And more unsettling still, why does it feel like there's something watching you be you? Recent research in what's called predictive processing offers a clue. This new understanding suggests that your brain isn't primarily reactive, responding to stimuli from the environment. Instead, it's fundamentally predictive, constantly generating models of what's likely to happen next based on past experience. What you think of as perception, seeing, hearing, feeling, is actually your brain's best guess about what's occurring in the world around you. Your nervous system is running a sophisticated simulation of reality, updated moment by moment, based on incoming sensory data. But here's where it gets really strange. Your brain is also predicting its own internal states. It's generating models of what you are likely to think and feel next, based on patterns it has learned over years of observation. If your brain is predicting your own mental states, creating models of your thoughts and emotions before you're consciously aware of them, then who exactly is doing the predicting? What is this intelligence that knows you better than you know yourself? Consider this possibility. What if the feeling of being watched, that persistent, uncanny sense that there's always someone observing your experience, isn't a malfunction of consciousness at all? What if it's the most accurate perception your nervous system is capable of? What if the self you think you are, the narrator of your internal experience, the voice in your head that comments on everything that happens, is not the observer, but the observed? Think about what happens when you look in a mirror. You see your reflection staring back at you, and you don't confuse that reflection with your actual self. The image in the glass is a representation, a pattern of light that resembles you, but isn't actually you. Now consider this. What if your sense of self, your internal narrator, your feeling of being the author of your thoughts and the decider of your actions, is also a reflection? What if it's just a representation generated by something deeper that's doing the actual observing? This isn't just philosophical speculation. Quantum physicist David Bohm, who worked closely with Einstein, suggested that consciousness might not be produced by the brain at all. Instead, he proposed that the brain might function more like a radio receiver, tuning into frequencies of consciousness that already exist in some larger field of awareness. If Bohm was right, then the feeling of being observed makes perfect sense. You are being observed by the very consciousness that's expressing itself through your particular nervous system. The watcher isn't separate from you. It's more fundamental than the you think you are. Let me ask you something deeply personal. Have you ever experienced a moment when your mind became completely quiet? Perhaps during meditation, or while walking in nature, or during some experience of profound beauty or terror. In those moments, the constant chatter of thoughts stopped, but something remained. Something was still aware, still present, still watching. What was that something? Most people, when they encounter this stillness, assume they've simply achieved a peaceful state of mind. But contemplatives throughout history have recognized something more profound. In the absence of mental activity, pure awareness reveals itself. The watcher emerges from behind the veil of thought. This awareness doesn't think, doesn't evaluate, doesn't judge. It simply witnesses. And it's been there, watching, throughout every moment of your life, behind every thought you've ever had, every emotion you've ever felt, every decision you've ever made. Dr. Sam Harris, who holds a PhD in neuroscience and has spent years studying consciousness both scientifically and experientially, makes a crucial point. Consciousness is the one thing in the universe that cannot possibly be an illusion, because illusion itself requires consciousness to exist. Even if everything you think you know about yourself is wrong, even if your memories are fabricated, your sense of identity is constructed, your thoughts are generated by unconscious processes, something is still aware of all this. Something is present to witness even the possibility of being wrong about itself. That something is the watcher, and it has been observing every moment of your existence. Here's what this means for that peculiar feeling you get when you're alone. That prickle of awareness on the back of your neck. That sense of being seen when no one else is around. Your nervous system isn't detecting a ghost or a supernatural presence. It's detecting the most intimate truth of your existence. You are not the thinker of your thoughts. You are not the feeler of your feelings. You are not even the experiencer of your experiences. You are the space in which thinking, feeling, and experiencing arise and pass away. And that space, that aware emptiness that remains constant while everything else changes, is what has been watching you all along. It's what was there before your first memory formed. It's what will be there after your last thought fades away. But this recognition leads us to an even more profound question. If individual consciousness is more like a receiver tuning into awareness than a generator creating it, if billions of nervous systems are all accessing the same fundamental field of consciousness, then what exactly is the source of this awareness? What if the feeling of being watched isn't coming from within the boundaries of your individual skull at all, but from something vast and shared? Something that's observing reality through billions of different perspectives simultaneously. Consider the implications. Every moment you felt truly alone, you weren't. Every private thought has been witnessed. Every secret experience has been observed, not by some external judge or cosmic surveillance system, but by the very awareness that you mistake for your personal, individual consciousness. The watcher that has been with you since birth, that will be with you until death, that observes your every thought and witnesses your every experience. This isn't personal to you. It's not generated by your individual brain or contained within your particular body. You are a temporary focal point of something infinitely larger, a unique perspective through which universal consciousness observes itself. The feeling of being watched isn't coming from some separate entity. It's the recognition of your true nature as awareness itself. This might sound abstract, but it has immediate, practical implications for how you experience life. Right now, as you process these ideas, you can probably sense multiple levels of awareness operating simultaneously. There's the part of you that's thinking about what you're hearing. There's another part that's aware of that thinking. And perhaps you can sense something even deeper, a still, spacious awareness that's observing the entire process without being touched by it. That deepest level of awareness, that's the watcher. That's what remains when all the stories about who you are fall away. It's what was aware before you learned language, before you developed a personality, before you acquired all the thoughts and beliefs and memories that you currently mistake for your identity. This awareness doesn't belong to you. You belong to it. And once you recognize this, once you see through the illusion of separate selfhood, the feeling of being watched transforms from something unsettling into something profoundly comforting. You realize that you have never actually been alone, not for a single moment of your existence. The very consciousness reading these words, the awareness that's considering these possibilities, the presence that might be feeling confused or curious or resistant to these ideas, that's not your personal consciousness. That's the one consciousness, appearing as you, observing reality from your unique perspective. Every other human being you've ever encountered is another appearance of this same awareness. Every moment of connection you felt with another person has been this one consciousness recognizing itself across the apparent boundary of separate bodies and minds. The question that haunted us at the beginning of this exploration, who's watching you, now reveals its answer. Universal awareness is observing itself through countless individual perspectives, like a single eye, looking through billions of different windows. This recognition transforms our inquiry from external search to internal revelation. We discover that the observer and the observed exist within the same unified field of consciousness, a cosmic mirror reflecting infinite aspects of itself through each moment of awareness. The question isn't who's watching, it's whether you're ready to recognize yourself as both the observer and the observed in this cosmic process of self-discovery that has been unfolding since the beginning of time.